When I was a teenager, my brother assaulted me. My parents never believed me and did nothing. Now they demand me to save my father and apologize to my brother. When I think back to my teenage years, there's a part of my story that still feels like a heavy weight in my heart. It was during those formative years, a time when I should have been discovering myself and enjoying the awkward journey to adulthood, that I faced something truly harrowing at the hands of my own brother. Despite being 2 years older than him, it didn't matter in the slightest because he had the physical advantage over me. He was both bigger and stronger, which he used to his advantage to hurt me. It wasn't just the physical pain that left scars, it was the psychological torment that followed. My brother, knowing the power he held, would often threaten me, saying that no one would believe me if I ever dared to speak out about what he was doing. This threat hung over me like a dark cloud, making me feel isolated and utterly powerless. Yet, despite the fear and the potential consequences, I reached a breaking point where I couldn't bear the burden alone anymore. So, I gathered every ounce of courage I had and decided to tell my parents, naively hoping for some semblance of justice, or, at the very least, protection. The reaction I received from my parents was a crushing blow, far worse than any physical pain my brother could inflict. They didn't believe me, not even for a second. The disbelief in their eyes quickly turned to anger, not towards him, but towards me. They were furious, punishing me for speaking out against my brother. In their eyes, he was the perfect child, incapable of such heinous actions. I remember feeling so desperate to make them see the truth that I showed them the physical evidence, the bruises that adorned my legs, the teeth marks that were a painful reminder of his cruelty. Yet even with the evidence staring them right in the face, my mother refused to believe me. It was as if she chose blindness over facing a reality too uncomfortable to acknowledge. The betrayal by my family left me with a deep-seated resentment that festered into hatred over the years. I hated my brother for the abuse and the trauma he caused me, but more than that, I hated my parents for their inaction, for their refusal to protect me. The day I turned 18, I made the decision to leave home, to escape a toxic environment that offered me nothing but pain and suffering. For years, I carried this hatred with me, allowing it to color my view of the world. Ironically, the only reason my parents ever came to know the truth was because of my brother's own undoing. One drunken night, with his inhibitions lowered, he confessed to my dad, bragging about his actions as if they were some sort of twisted achievement. He admitted to hurting me, treating the whole ordeal as a game for his sick amusement. It was only then, faced with the undeniable truth from the perpetrator himself, that my parents could no longer hide behind their denial. But by then, the damage was done. The years of disbelief and neglect couldn't be undone with a simple acknowledgement of the truth. The rift that had formed between us was too wide, the wounds too deep to simply heal over with apologies or regret. My teenage years, a time that should have been filled with growth and discovery, were marred by betrayal and pain, shaping me into the person I am today, forever changed by the actions of my family. The day they reached out, part of me deep down hoped for an apology, some form of acknowledgement for the pain I had endured. I thought maybe, just maybe, they wanted to make amends, to help heal the wounds, or even to hold my brother accountable for his actions. But the reality was far from what I hoped for. My mother's approach was to sweep everything under the rug with the belief that everyone makes mistakes. She suggested we should all just forgive each other, pretending as if nothing happened, and move on as one big, happy family. It was as if the years of pain and suffering I went through were just minor blips, easily forgivable and forgettable. That was the final straw for me. I realized then that seeking validation or understanding from them was futile. They were not the family I yearned for or needed, so I made the hard choice to leave them behind and cut off all communication. It was a decision that marked the beginning of a new chapter in my life, one where I was no longer defined by the trauma and neglect I experienced at their hands. Years passed, and with a lot of hard work and therapy, I started to rebuild myself. I built a life filled with joy, love, and peace. I found happiness in a marriage with a wonderful man, someone who showed me what it means to be truly cared for and loved. We began dreaming of starting our own family, a family where love and trust are the foundations. Just when I thought I had left the past behind, it came knocking in the form of my mother. My father's health was deteriorating, his liver was failing, and they were desperate. Knowing we shared the same blood type, my mother reached out, asking me to consider donating part of my liver to save him. Her plea was laced with the implication that I owed them, that after everything, it was my duty to step in. Her words stung with the same dismissiveness and entitlement that drove me away all those years ago. It was as if the years of abuse, the lack of belief, and the absence of support meant nothing. As if I should just forget it all because they needed me now. But I couldn't. The mere thought of going through with it, of putting myself at risk for people who had shown me time and again that my well-being was of no concern to them, was unthinkable. I said no. It was a firm, unwavering no. Not just to the idea of the donation, but to letting them back into my life, to reopening old wounds that had taken so long to heal. My mother's words, implying that I owed them this lease on life, only solidified my resolve. It was a painful reminder of the emotional chasm between us, a gap that could not be bridged by guilt or manipulation. Choosing myself and my well-being was not an easy decision, but it was the right one. It was a declaration that I was no longer bound by their expectations or by the past. My life, my happiness, and my family's future were, and always will be, my priority. So here's the deal. My dad's really sick. Like, his liver is having a big-time struggle, and my mom thinks I should be the superhero who swoops in to save the day because, well, we share the same type of blood. But here's the kicker. Things between me and my family, they're pretty rocky. And not the, oh, we had a small argument kind of rocky. More like the big, deep, canyon-sized gap kind of rocky. Now things got way more complicated when my brother decided to play the villain in this story. He went behind my back and told my husband a bunch of nasty, untrue things about me. He called me lazy, a liar, and even made up stories about me that were so out there, they could be from a bad movie. He tried to make me out to be the worst person on the planet. My husband, he's been my rock through all of this. Before my brother decided to spin these tales, I hadn't spilled all the beans about my past and my family drama to him. I mean, who wants to relive all that, right? But when these wild stories from my brother came out, my husband didn't just take his word for it. He came to me looking for the truth. And let me tell you, that conversation, it was one of the hardest I've ever had. I ended up crying a lot as I told him everything, every single thing that happened. And through it all, he just held me, making me feel safe and loved. It was tough, but also kind of a moment where you see the silver lining in having someone so supportive by your side. But here's where it gets even more intense. My mom and brother, they didn't let up. They kept on pushing, trying to guilt trip me into doing what they wanted, which was to go through with testing to see if I could be a donor for my dad. They even had the nerve to demand an apology from me, as if I was the one who did something wrong. Thankfully, my husband has been amazing. He's been like my personal superhero, shielding me from their attempts to drag me back into the mess. But, and here's the real twist, all this drama has kind of thrown me back in time, emotionally speaking. I'm feeling all those old fears and vulnerabilities like I'm a teenager again, dealing with all this for the first time. It's been a real eye-opener seeing how some battles from your past aren't as finished as you thought they were. But having someone in your corner like my husband, it changes the game. It doesn't make the problem vanish, but it sure helps you face it with a bit more courage. Now for the top comment before the update. I'm truly sorry to hear about the pain and trauma you've experienced throughout your life due to the abuse from your brother and the lack of support from your parents. It's clear that you've endured a great deal of suffering, and it's completely understandable that you carry these feelings with you. Your decision to distance yourself from your family was a means of protecting yourself, and it's important to prioritize your own well-being and mental health. It's evident that their actions have caused you significant pain, and that their recent attempts to guilt you into helping are re-traumatizing you. First and foremost, you should prioritize your safety, mental health, and well-being. It's important to remember that you are not responsible for the choices your family members have made, and their actions are not a reflection of your worth. As for your husband, it's wonderful that he has been supportive and understanding throughout this difficult time. Having someone who is there for you can make a significant positive impact on your healing process. Given the recent contact from your family, you might consider seeking professional guidance from a therapist or counselor. They can provide you with the tools and coping strategies to navigate these difficult interactions and emotions. Additionally, if the harassment from your family members continues and escalates, you might also want to explore legal options for restraining orders or other measures to protect yourself. Ultimately, the decision to have any form of contact with your family should be based on what you believe is best for your own healing and well-being. You have the right to make choices that prioritize your happiness and safety. It's important to surround yourself with supportive people who care about you and respect your boundaries. Remember that healing is a journey, and it's okay to reach out for help when needed. Your strength in sharing your story and seeking assistance is commendable, and I hope that you continue to find the support you deserve as you move forward. Now for the update. Update. All right, so here's what's been going on with me lately, and let me tell you, it's been one wild ride. The last few days, absolutely nuts. A ton of stuff has gone down, and honestly, it's been super tough to even figure out where to start telling this story. There were moments when I felt super weak, like I couldn't stand up for myself, and I almost gave in to all the craziness. But here's the kicker. You guys, with all your messages and support, have been absolute lifesavers. Seriously, you've helped me see that I'm not the bad guy in this mess, and that those other folks, they don't have any right to expect anything from me. So every day, I've got people reminding me that I'm not the one in the wrong here, and having my husband by my side through all of this has been like having my own personal superhero. He's been there for me, 100%. And I just have to say, I can't thank you all enough. Reading through all your comments and advice has been a game changer for me. I even took a big step and asked to have a chat with my family, hoping to get some more info and maybe even some evidence on tape of how they've been acting. Now, my husband has been an absolute rock through everything. He's been right there with me, which totally got under my mom's skin. She kept saying he shouldn't be involved, trying to make it out like this whole mess is just a family issue, and acting like my husband doesn't count because we didn't get married in the same way they think we should have. But I stood my ground. I told them he's part of this, whether they like it or not, because he's with me. And that's non-negotiable. In the middle of all this chaos, having people back me up and remind me that I'm doing the right thing has been everything. It's made me feel stronger, knowing I've got a whole team of supporters behind me, plus my husband right there beside me. So yeah, a huge thank you to everyone who's been sending good vibes my way. It's made all the difference in the world. My family weren't lying. My dad is dying and is way worse than I thought. He needs my liver as soon as possible. And apparently, I was their last option. They believed that I would bend and do anything they ordered the moment they contacted me, just as I used to when I was a child, but not anymore, as some suggested. I started to record every conversation with my phone. I tried to make them admit about the abuse and their role in it because, as some told me to, I investigated and what my brother did to me was not prescribed, but it was meaningless. Mom just keeps saying that never happened. That always lies that I'm insane and only wanted to hurt the family. I even told my dad that I would take the test if they helped me to testify or sign a document saying what my brother did to me. But again, it was useless. Mom keeps saying that never happened, and I was lying in Dad. He acted like I insulted him, saying things like how I dare to try to extort them with something like that. Then I should be ashamed for everything I did to them, and that I should be the one kneeling in front of them, begging for their forgiveness, and offering everything I had to save his life. After everything that happened, even that situation, they still believe I'm the problematic child they always claimed I was, that they still had authority over me, and that I owe them this. I was done after that. I told them I'm not doing that they have no right to ask me anything, that I don't consider them. My parents, since they enabled my brother to abuse me. My husband and I left them, but all the way to the car, my mother followed us, yelling at me for killing my own father. She even quoted the Bible saying that I should obey my father and mother, but looks like I wanted to add another sin to my list. Since then, the harassment became worse. I'm getting called every day, lots of awful texts calling me selfish, calling me murderer. I tried my best to keep and look strong, but I have been breaking in tears every day at the shower. It still hurts. We tried for the restriction order, but it's going to be stupidly slow as they don't believe I'm in immediately risk, and because it's December and people don't do much on this days. But my breaking point arrived 2 days ago when my mother called again. I take all the calls and record them to try to have something that helped me in case she say something or admit what my brother did. But this time she went right to hurt me. She always knew how to hurt me. What buttons press? She told me lots of awful things, like how they told everyone in their community that I ran away because I was an addict and became a prostitute, that I was a shame, that will burn in hell for killing my father, for lie and turn my back to the family. She told me how I was broken March, that no one would ever really love me for not being pure, that man, that's how she called my husband, would use me, get bored and leave me as the trash I am, and that every man would do the same. She kept on it for 30 minutes. I tried to reply at the beginning, make her say something, make her to commit a mistake, but at some point it was too much. I couldn't stand anymore and break. My husband found me on the floor. I was a crying mess, shaking. I tried to be strong, to face them, to maybe find some justice for what he did, but I couldn't take it anymore. I'm not that strong. He hugged me while I cried. I begged him to never leave, to love me, to take me away from there. I didn't want to know anything about them. He let me cry and supported me until I fell asleep. I don't know how he did it, but I woke up in bed. It was 4 a.m. When I woke up, he was still awake, taking care of me. I told him that I couldn't do it anymore. I can't stand against this. The transplant. Trying to make my brother pay. I was done and just wanted to escape. He told me that he would do anything I wanted as long as I was safe and happy. Yesterday, he came to me and asked me if I really mean what I said about an escape. I told him yes. I wanted to just get out, turn off my phone, and to not think about any of this. So I was impatient for our trip. Every year we stay with his family for Christmas and New Year. His family is amazing, and those days are super fun. Well, he said that we could have a little vacations before our vacations. He said that after a little research, he got us a trip to Las Vegas and Disney. He got everything ready, only needed to confirm. So he was asking me. I really wanted to get out. I was livid. I freaking love Disney and always wanted to go to Disneyland. I wanted to say yes, but how are we going to pay it? We are not poor and had some savings, but everything he was offering me sounds really expensive. To put you in context, my husband loves video games, and beside our own savings, he has been saving to buy a complete gaming 7. He wanted to buy it for his birthday, but he told me that after he saw me and how I was, he needed to do something. So he decided to take that money and use it. This is one of the most beautiful things he had done for me. I cried and hugged him. So now we are going to USA. I'm aware this is not a solution and these monsters will still be there when I return. But with this, I'm getting away from them. To have peace and fun, and to be surrounded of people that love and care about me. To me, that is a win. I notified the hospital that I'm being pressured for the transplant and that I don't want to do it now, no matter what. I'm not giving him anything. I send a final text to my mother saying I will never do it, to stop harassing me and never try to talk to me again. And then I will go to the police and do everything I can to put my brother in jail. I don't want any of them in my life again. I block my mother's number and every unknown number that they had used these days and going for no contact again. It's going to be hard, long, and painful. But I have my husband's support and all you beautiful Reddit people. Again, thank you and happy holidays to everyone. Story 2. Am I the hole for not moving out of the property? My parents gave me so that my golden child sister, her husband, and kid could move in. So I have a big sister who's 34 years old, and she was the first one out of all 4 of us kids to have a baby. She has this little girl who's now 5, and let me tell you, she gets everything she wants. My sister is always spoiling her big time. Even our grandparents, uncles, and aunts jump through hoops whenever my sister asks for something. Like this one time, our parents were supposed to go on a special trip for their anniversary, but they canceled it just because my sister wanted someone to look after her daughter while she went out with her friends for a weekend. Now let's talk about a really tough time I went through. My boyfriend, who was super important to me, sadly passed away, and around the same time I lost my job. Things were really rough, so I ended up moving back to where I grew up. My parents have this house in the countryside that they used to rent out, but it hadn't been taken care of in a while and was kind of falling apart. They told me I could stay there without paying anything for as long as I needed. They were really cool about it. I put a lot of effort, time, and my own money into fixing up the place. It started to look really nice. While I was doing all this, I made a new friend. She's from Ukraine and has a young daughter. They've been having a hard time, so I invited them to stay with me for a bit until they could get back on their feet. It was also nice to have the company. My new friend from Ukraine was really grateful for my offer to stay with me, but she hasn't decided yet because she wants to try making it on her own. My parents were totally cool with her possibly moving in, but then some new drama started. My sister's husband used to work for this company that was doing some shady business, not really following the rules to make more money. Eventually, the law caught up with them, the boss shut down the company, and skipped the country. To make a long story short, after a bunch of other stuff happened, my sister's family suddenly had to move back to our hometown, and they moved in with my parents super quick. Then, my family came up with this idea. They wanted me to move back in with my parents, and my sister and her family would take over the house I fixed up. They said the house was too big for just me, and that it would be awesome for my niece to grow up in such a nice place close to nature. This didn't make sense to me. My parents' house has plenty of room with 2 extra bedrooms. My sister, her husband, and their kid could each have their own room. I mean, when I was 5, I definitely didn't have my own room. Plus, my sister's husband still has a lot of money from his old job, and they're even buying an expensive car. They could afford their own place easily. When I brought up all the hard work I put into the property and mentioned my friend Olhar and her daughter, my family kind of just brushed it off. So when I told my parents about wanting to help my friend Olhar and her daughter, they got super mad. They couldn't believe I was thinking of helping someone else instead of my own sister and my niece. They tried to make it seem like my sister was having just as tough a time as Olhar. Finally, my parents laid down the law, saying, "Since you're living on our property, you have to follow our rules." I reminded them that they told me the house was mine to call home as long as I needed it. But then the conversation took a turn, and it was like we were talking about a business deal instead of family stuff. They stopped short of kicking me out, but every day I got calls and texts from them and other relatives. They were trying to make me feel bad, saying I was being selfish for not letting my sister, who supposedly was going through a lot, move into the nicer house with her daughter. My brothers are the only ones who get where I'm coming from. But because they're just college guys, nobody in the family takes what they say seriously. It's like I'm in some weird alternate reality where nothing I say or feel makes sense to anyone else. And now I'm wondering, am I being unreasonable here?